we mentioned that we would touch on this from a high level. Kevin, if you want to give us some insight here on taxes.
Yeah. So first off, I'm not a tax preparer and don't play one on TV. So everything I'm saying, take a little bit of a grain of salt, but I am a seller myself and I've lived through this, and I've talked to lots of sellers and helped lots of sellers expand internationally. And this is a topic that I think scares a lot of people away from getting those potential sales. And what ends up happening is people don't really understand that there's really, when you think of it, you just, again, grossly oversimplifying it, but this is more for illustration purposes. You have two buckets of taxes: sales tax and income tax. Sales tax generally goes to the local government, whereas the income tax generally goes to your government. So the taxes on the profits, your income tax, goes to, let's say for me, it goes to Uncle Sam. So I pay the IRS, the US government, based on, the profits I made in Europe, Canada, Australia, wherever else. That's how that works. Now, here's where people sometimes get tripped up. And I've heard this story many, many times from US sellers. They go to their accountant and ask, hey, I want to sell in Europe. Can you help me figure out VAT? I want to sell in Canada. Help me figure out their tax, the GST. And then their accountant, who, has usually a CPA license, has spent all this time figuring out the very complex US tax code, is an expert on the US income tax code, has no idea about these other countries and wants nothing to do with it and says, that's not my thing. But I have found, if you just say, here's my profit and loss statement, which includes from these other countries, they will help you out with that part. But if you ask them about the sales tax, they don't understand it. But don't let that scare you away. The way I phrase this sometimes is, if you went to the eye doctor and they said, hey, which is better, A or B, B or C, trying to figure out the best prescription for your contacts or glasses. And then when you were done, you said, while I'm here, can you help me? My tooth hurts. And they said, I don't do teeth. You wouldn't just live with the toothache, you would go to the dentist. And so just because they're doctors who focus on the head doesn't necessarily mean they do the same thing. And the same thing with accountants. They have their specialties. So go to the eye doctor for the eye doctor, for the dentist for dentistry. So use the same analogy when finding people to help you with the tax part in other countries.
It's also worth noting that the Amazon in particular have some pretty sophisticated schemes once you are tax compliant for looking after your taxes in all the different countries that are being collected, sending the taxes to those countries and giving you a statement and on what that looks like. If you're just selling on Amazon and you're not selling off platforms, Amazon have done a really good job of simplifying that for a fee. But we've talked about those costs being, in your upfront costs. They've done a really good job of, simplifying what that part looks like. And at the end of the day, as Kevin said, you're going to have to get some expert advice. It's not something that you deal with. So once that's there, you can lean and rely on that organization, be that through Amazon's visa program or through, any other recommendation that you've been put in, to make that happen. But it doesn't need to be as daunting as you might think, in terms of, the money that you bring home is your income tax, but the sales tax is what you're selling on the goods that you do. And indeed, if you're selling something for $100 or £100 or €100, that will include, you'll have all of that sorted out on your from the get-go, but that will include the sales tax of that particular country that you're selling in. So what that means is that typically the prices are different between countries based on their inclusive tax.
So to summarize, we are neither tax experts nor doctors, but the resources are definitely there, and it's not as scary as it's probably made out to be.
And I just want to touch on one little example here. And I think it goes back to, sometimes also there's a little bit of a difference in language. I was saying, between Florida and other parts of the country, we describe things differently. And sometimes there's different languages used across the pond, so to speak. In America, anything that with taxes, if we use the word scheme, we think Bernie Madoff, we think we're going to be hauled off in handcuffs, whereas that just means methodology of calculation, basically, in the UK. So always ask the questions, learn at least the language. You don't have to know all the nitty gritty minutia, but just find the people that know what they're talking about, and, you know, and get help and learn the basics.